Earth is not a closed system.
Gas dome.
The Earth is a closed system.
Glass dome.
Earth is not a closed system.
Gas dome.
The Earth is a closed system.
Glass dome.
Earth is not a closed system.
Gas dome.
The Earth is a closed system.
Glass dome. Get it? Glass dome. Gas dome. Are you with me?
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Now, one thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system.
The Earth is a closed system.
We cannot leave the Earth. There's no place to go.
Now, a lot of scholars are out there today suggesting or demanding that the word firmament is simply an expanse. It's the expanse of the air, the atmosphere, and the vacuum of space. Have you heard that before? The firmament is just an expanse. Anybody heard that before? I hear it from my detractors all the time. Funny thing is, the Hebrews and the Greeks disagree with that, especially the Hebrew scholars that took their Hebrew text and translated the Hebrew into Greek. So these are Hebrew people who understand their Hebrew culture, their Hebrew scriptures. They took the Hebrew words and translated them into Greek for the Septuagint. And the word that they chose for the Hebrew word rakia, when they translated it into Greek, was sterioma. And that word, the origin of that word, is a combining form borrowed from Greek where it meant solid, used with reference to hardness, solidity, three-dimensionality in the formation of compound words. And when you just look at other online resources such as blueletterbible.com, look up the word rakia, you'll see right there it's an extended surface, solid, expanse, firmament, expanse, flat as base, support, firmament of vault of heaven supporting waters above, considered by Hebrews as solid and supporting waters above. Over and over and over again, you see that the Hebrews understood it to be solid. The word rakia comes from a root word, raka. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing these words wrong. And when you look up that word, that root word, it talks about to beat, to stamp out, to spread out, to stretch, to stamp out, to beat out, like when you're pounding metal. Spreading metal out by beating on it. I don't know how you can beat on air to create an expanse. And Job, which I believe actually predates Genesis, comes right out and tells you. In Job chapter 37, verse 18, pick your translation. I grew up in the King James. So the King James says, "Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong as a molten looking glass?" What's a molten looking glass? It's a mirror made out of beaten down metal. I mean, Job comes right out and tells you this thing is hard.
Because the thing is, the scientists are literally saying that they're bouncing signals off of the sky. Now, their excuse is saying it's a shell of electrically charged particles, but this seems to be their excuse and their only way to describe what they are witnessing. Because if you think about it with common sense, the air is supposed to be thinner the farther you go up. And so how are they possibly bouncing signals off of the sky? You see, satellites do not exist. They're just bouncing signals off this reflective dome firmament. The reflective properties of the dome firmament is part of the reason why you see rainbows, sundogs, and more. Because according to my research, the dome is most likely some form of reflective material.
In Egyptian mythology, Nut is the goddess of the sky. She is seen star-covered, arching over the earth, representing its dome. In Greek mythology, Uranus was the primeval god of the sky. The Greeks imagined the sky as a solid dome of brass, whose edges descended to rest upon the outermost limits of the flat earth. Uranus was the literal sky, and Gaia the earth. In the Roman era, he was often depicted as Aeon, god of eternal time, in the form of a man holding the zodiac wheel, standing above Gaia. The Hebrews believed the sky was a solid dome. They called this solid vault of heaven the Rakia, with the sun, moon, and stars beneath. In Indian mythology, the dome is called Brahmanda. This is the structure of the world according to Finnish mythology, showing a dome with the stars projected onto it. In the Aboriginal conception of the world, the earth was circular and flat, covered by the dome of the sky, which stretched out to the horizon. And there have been many ancient artifacts found, which the mainstream has called stone handbags. But as you can see, there's no area to even carry anything. These were not handbags, they're artistic depictions of the dome here on flat Earth. So many ancient peoples knew about this dome and wove it into their worldview. The elite would have us believe that these are just made-up cosmologies, invented by peoples who were too scientifically ignorant to understand reality. But there is no coincidence that the same description of a flat Earth and dome is so common. These cultures around the world had special knowledge about the nature of this place we are living in.
And it may be hard to see tonight, but we are all standing under a glass ceiling right now.
Something really strange going on about 100 kilometers up, and it's not really talked about much. I think the Wild Heretic website's gone into this quite well. I want to accentuate it. Now, the thermosphere starts around 100 kilometers up. This is sort of the area where NASA seems to have a lot of trouble, but that's for another subject. What happens at 100 kilometers up? It goes from around minus 50, 60 degrees, which is pretty cold, to well over 200 degrees in a really thin layer of altitude, all around 100 kilometers up. What would cause this drastic change of temperature? What could do this? What could be there? I mean, I've personally not seen enough evidence to suggest anything's even gone past this 100-kilometer range, but that's for another time. Now, the ionosphere is around 60 kilometers up to 600 kilometers up, and it's full of ionized radiation. And many communication technologies bounce off this. They bounce off whatever's going on around 100 kilometers up. So it's like there's a layer there. Even the Northern Lights, they start at 100 kilometer up as well. They never come below 100 kilometers. And they go up to around 120 kilometers usually, but can go up to 500 kilometers.
This is a quote from an article taken from ibtimes.com, and I've got the link there for that. It says, the Earth is protected from fast-moving killer electrons by an invisible plasma shield.
Impossible radio transmissions in 1915 where essentially the entire world could hear a transmission. That was before satellites, obviously. Okay. First transmission of the BBC Empire Service was broadcast on the 19th of December 1932 from this building. And it shows here basically all the places it could hear. Okay. 1915, Arlington, Virginia. They're able to hear this message, this transmission, in Europe, Hawaii, which is basically impossible. Okay. Without satellites, allegedly. Allegedly without satellites. So it's kind of curious why they were able to do that. It kind of defies heliocentrism, considering that we're allegedly on a convex ball. There's no way for those radio transmissions going in a straight line to curve around the Earth, right? And even if you have the bounce effect that they allegedly, they don't even explain that right. Even if you take into consideration like AM radio and the bounce effect and all this type of stuff, and other types of frequencies that can bounce off the alleged ionosphere, which is another quandary right there. How does it bounce off this mysterious ionosphere? Why does everything bounce off this ionosphere? The Kármán line.
High above the Earth's atmosphere, harmful electrons that make up the outer band of the Van Allen radiation belt travel at nearly the speed of light, pelting everything in their path. Exposure to such high-energy radiation can harm satellite electronics and pose serious health risks to astronauts. However, despite their intense energy, these electrons circling around the planet's equator cannot come below 7,200 miles from the Earth's surface due to the shield, scientists said in a...
The height of the Heaviside layer, which is the dome of the sky, has been measured by the time taken by radar waves to return to Earth. This distance has been given as being from 40 to 50 kilometers in the daytime, and 90 kilometers during nighttime, but the figure obtained for the day may be considered unreliable, since it may well be believed that an acceleration takes place in the propagation of the waves due to the heat of the sun. It is known, on the other hand, that the thickness of the atmosphere has also been measured. But the atmosphere is invisible, and since the dome is the only surface on which the eye can rest, it is clear that the thickness of the atmosphere means the height of the dome. In the 11th century, the Arabs, by measuring the duration of twilight, assuming that their method is acceptable, established that this thickness is 92 kilometers, and nowadays, by the same method, a figure of 64 kilometers has been obtained.
It's almost like these electrons are running into a glass wall in space. Daniel Baker of the University of Colorado Boulder and the study's lead author said,
In 1947, during Operation High Jump, Admiral Byrd discovered the outer boundaries of the firmament. Many of his men's planes were disappearing very quickly. A lot of them were crashing into invisible barriers and disintegrating in mid-flight. It was shortly after discovering this barrier that Byrd discontinued his mission and returned home. What happened is Byrd's planes encountered the walls of the vaulted dome. Soon after, many measures like the Antarctica Treaty and a consistent military presence at the ice wall were put in place to cover up the structure of our enclosed world system, while also preventing unwarranted intrusion which could lead to an announcement of the discovery of the Earth's dome.
And in that film we show footage of the Navy planes landing in these lakes. But even more so, he found, to his amazement, that his planes were disappearing very quickly. A lot of them crashed into invisible barriers and disintegrated in mid-flight. This is an indication that the Germans had already perfected the force field shields, and they were up and operational around the German colony at Neuschwabenland.
somewhat like the shields created by force fields in Star Trek that were used to repel alien weapons, we are seeing an invisible shield blocking these electrons. It's an extremely puzzling phenomenon.
Lightning is a phenomenon which results from the electrification of the vault, but it must be explained that the luminous branches and ramifications which are observed in what is called forked lightning are not lightning at all, strictly speaking, neither do they traverse the atmosphere as is believed. They correspond to luminous electrical currents, which travel in the vault of the sky itself, where they follow irregular tracks, probably metallic veins, and it can also be seen that they adopt the convex shape of the vault. These currents contribute eventually to the accumulation at a certain spot of the quantity of electricity which is required to cause a discharge towards the Earth, which occurs then in a direct line.
The invisible shield, dubbed the plasmaspheric hiss, is made up of very low frequency electromagnetic waves in the Earth's upper atmosphere.
It has been calculated that the height of meteors never exceeds 90 kilometers, and this figure confirms the estimate, which is given further on of the probable distance of the vault of the sky from the surface of the Earth. The comets, meteors, and shooting stars are phenomena, which also have their origin, like the so-called forked lightning, in the mass of the vault. The author, definitely, knows this to be the case. Comets are spontaneous luminous manifestations, which are created by electrical reactions occurring in the vault of the sky, and this explains their unexpected and sudden appearances, as well as their rapid and erratic movements, indifferently direct or retrograde. The passage of a comet is not accompanied by sound, that is to say that there is no electrical discharge like in the case of lightning, which causes the vault to split and detonate. It can be surmised that lightning takes place in the thickness of the vault, whereas a comet is a surface phenomenon. The orbit of comets which may be seen to sweep across the vast expanse of the sky is described as parabolic. This means, in fact, since the passage takes place on the surface of the dome, that the orbit follows exactly the curvature of same and acquires, therefore, a seemingly parabolic shape. The formation of comets seems to be due to the influence of the satellite disks of the Earth as they pass at certain points of the vault of the sky, otherwise, when they occupy certain degrees of the zodiac, particularly the 29th degree of Sagittarius. In the case of Encke's comet of December 21, 1795, the Sun was at the 29th degree of Sagittarius. In that of Brooks' comet of November LLTH 1911, Mercury was passing at the same degree, and again for Donati's comet, October 2, 1858, it was Mars which was effecting its passage at this very spot. The same remark applies, moreover, to the third degree of various signs, particularly Gemini. In the last case mentioned, that of Donati's comet, Uranus was at the third degree of Gemini. For Halley's comet which returned on March 4, 1910, Mercury was at the same degree, Venus at the second degree of Libra, Mars at the second degree of Cancer, while simultaneously Saturn passed at the 29th degree of Aries, etc. All these circumstances, which cannot be coincidences, point evidently to the existence of a mathematical law, governing the formation of comets, through the combined agencies of the satellites, when they pass simultaneously at various degrees of the zodiac, and since the satellites have a regular motion, it follows that the periodicity of comets, if it does exist, may be due to this fact. Shooting stars are not to be confused with the stars in the ordinary sense, which form the constellations and move at a very slow pace. They are luminous manifestations, which glide rapidly on the surface of the vault of heaven, without any electrical discharge towards the earth. They are, thus, related to vault lightning, especially as they sometimes can be heard to emit crackling sounds like sparks. Meteors are also luminous phenomena, resulting from electrical reactions which occur in the vault of the sky. It has been observed that they are frequently accompanied by detonation, and by a sound similar to that of thunder, which is, therefore, caused by the splitting of the dome, so that there can be no doubt as to their real origin.
Scientific data and calculations have helped researchers deduce that the hiss deflects incoming electrons, causing them to smash into neutral gas atoms in the Earth's upper atmosphere and ultimately disappear.
Be careful.
How high is this thing? Farouz!
Well?
I can't find him in this dim light. Got him! He's up now where the light still remains. He's gaining altitude. He's turning towards the wall.
Why are you stopping? What's happened?
Dermot. He disappeared.
And ultimately disappear. It's a very unusual, extraordinary, and pronounced phenomenon, John Foster, Associate Director of MIT's Haystack Observatory, said in a statement. What this tells us is if you parked a satellite or an orbiting space station with humans just inside this impenetrable barrier, you would expect them to have much longer lifetimes. That's a good thing to know.
I guess I'm up against the highest, hardest stained glass ceiling.
The latest study is based on data collected by NASA's Van Allen probes that are orbiting within the harsh environments of the Van Allen radiation belt. Oh, you mean the one that they just flew through, no problem, back in the 60s? Huh, in the 70s?
We went right out through them. No effects on your cells? Didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside.
During the study, the researchers observed an, quote, exceedingly sharp barrier, end quote, against harmful electrons, which was steady enough to withstand a solar wind shock in October 2013.